You destroyed my daughter's life for what a profit margin. Sophia Bennett's voice didn't shake when she said it. Her hands did pressed flat against the cold metal of the payphone, knuckles white, 2:14 in the morning, but her voice held like iron. The man on the other end of the line said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then Damian Russo spoke. Who gave you this number? Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. Sophia had made exactly 3 phone calls that changed her life. The first was to the hospital the night Emma stopped breathing at 18 months old. The second was to her mother the morning she finally admitted that Marcus had left and wasn't coming back. The third was at 2:14 in the morning on a Tuesday in November, from a payphone 2 blocks from her apartment building in the rain, to a number she had found tucked inside a ledger that was never supposed to exist. She had chosen the payphone deliberately. She had left her cell phone on her kitchen counter, battery removed, because she had spent the last 4 days reading documents that explained exactly how men like Richard Vale tracked people who became inconvenient. She knew what she was doing. She had rehearsed it in her head for 6 hours while Emma slept, and the rain hit the window and the eviction notice sat on the kitchen table like a verdict. She was terrified, but she was not confused. There is a difference between those two things, and Sophia Bennett had learned it the hard way, the way most women who raise children alone learn everything by surviving something that was supposed to break her. The rain was cold. Chicago rain in November doesn't fall so much as it attacks coming sideways off the lake, finding the gap between your collar and your neck, soaking through whatever you thought was waterproof. Sophia stood in the phone booth with her coat pulled tight, listening to the line ring once, and then the call connected. Silence first. Then, who gave you this number, Dave? His voice was not what she expected. She had expected something theatrical, something Hollywood. She had expected a growl, an accent, something that announced itself as dangerous. Instead, Damian Russo sounded like a man who had just been woken up, which he had, and who was not particularly alarmed by it, which he wasn't, because men who ran what he ran learned early that midnight phone calls were just part of the schedule. What she heard was patience. Controlled. The voice of a man who was waiting to decide whether you were worth his time. The ledger, she said. I found a ledger. Your name is in it twice, both times marked clean, but the name next to yours isn't clean. And what that name has been doing to people in this city for the last 4 years is going to become a federal case within the next 30 days, unless someone with actual power does something about it. Another silence. Longer this time. You have 30 seconds, he said, to tell me something I don't already know. Sophia had prepared for this. She had prepared for a lot of things. She had not prepared for the fact that she would feel standing in that rain at 2 in the morning, something that was almost like calm. Something underneath the fear that was steadier than the fear. She recognized it only later sitting in her car, hands still shaking. It was clarity. The specific clarity that comes when you have run out of options, and the only door left is the one everyone told you not to open. She talked for 27 seconds. She told him about the Millfield Housing Cooperative, which was not a cooperative, it was a trap. She told him about the 14 families who had paid deposits ranging from $8,000 to $22,000 to secure apartments in a development that had never been built and never would be built. She told him about the subsidiary company, 3 layers deep in the corporate structure, deliberately obscured, that connected the Millfield Housing Cooperative to an investment group that connected to another shell company that connected eventually to a man named Richard Vale, who sat on 2 nonprofit boards, attended the mayor's annual dinner, and had a photo of himself with the governor framed on his office wall. She told him that she knew this because she had been the bookkeeper. She had been the woman behind this curtain, and she had not known what she was keeping books for until the week before the company changed names and her job disappeared, and she made the mistake of saving a copy of everything before she handed over her access credentials because something had felt wrong. Had felt wrong for months. And Sophia Bennett had survived 32 years in this world by trusting that feeling. 27 seconds. Then Damian Russo said, "Stay on the line." She waited for 4 minutes. She watched a cab move through the intersection at the end of the block. its headlights blurred by rain. She watched a light go on in an apartment above the dry cleaners across the street, stay on for 2 minutes, go off again. She thought about Emma. Emma was 6. Emma had her father's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness, and a laugh that Sophia had once heard described by a stranger in a grocery store as infectious, which was the most accurate word anyone had ever used for anything. Emma was asleep. Emma did not know that her mother was standing in the rain, talking to a man whose name people said quietly and in certain company only. When Damien came back on the line, his voice had changed. Not softer, more focused, like a lens that had been adjusted. "The Millfield documents," he said. "How many pages?" 214, Sophia said. "I have them scanned. I have the originals." "Where are the originals?" "Somewhere you won't find them without my cooperation." There was a pause. Then something that might in another man have been a laugh. In Damien Rousseau, it was a sound she could not quite categorize. She filed it away. She filed everything away. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want protection for my daughter and myself. I want the people who lost money in this scheme to get it back. And I want Richard Vale to face what he did." "That's 3 things." "Yes. Most people who call me want one thing: money." "I'm not most people." Another pause. Longer. She could feel him thinking, which was strange. She would not have expected to be able to feel a man thinking across a telephone line in the rain, but she could. She felt the weight of it. "Come to the Carmine Building on Michigan Avenue tomorrow morning," he said. 8 o'clock. "Tell the man at the front desk you have a meeting with Mr. Sullivan. Do not be late." The line went dead. Sophia stood in the phone booth for another full minute, listening to rain and silence. Then she walked back to her car, drove home, checked on Emma 3 times, and did not sleep. She had worked at Carrington Financial Services for 11 months. She had taken the job because it paid more than the bakery, and the bakery had already begun showing the signs: foot traffic declining, orders dropping, the owner, Frank, getting quieter every week in the way that business owners get quiet before they close. She had taken the bookkeeping job because she was good with numbers, had always been good with numbers, had taken 2 semesters of accounting at the community college before Emma was born, and before the money ran out for tuition, and because the ad had promised benefits, and Emma's inhaler cost $240 without insurance. Carrington Financial Services operated out of a pleasant office on the 14th floor of a building downtown. The staff was small, 12 people total, and professional in the manner of people who have been carefully selected to project professionalism. Her supervisor was a woman named Glenda, who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and brought homemade cookies to the office on Fridays, and never in 11 months answered a direct question about what specifically the company's primary revenue source was. Sophia had not asked at first. She did the work she was given. She reconciled accounts. She processed invoices. She maintained spreadsheets that tracked incoming deposits and outgoing disbursements for what appeared to be a real estate investment portfolio. The portfolio had a lot of moving parts. The deposits came from many sources. The disbursements went to many places. It took her 4 months to notice the pattern. It took her 2 more months to be certain she was seeing what she thought she was seeing. It took her 1 more month to understand what it meant for the people whose money had moved through her spreadsheets. The Millfield Housing Cooperative, the Lakeview Residential Initiative, the Southside Community Development Fund. 3 separate entities, 3 separate sets of books, each one presenting itself to the public as a legitimate housing assistance program. Each one collecting deposits from families who believed they were securing affordable housing in a city where affordable housing was so scarce, it might as well have been a myth. Not one of those programs had ever produced a unit of housing. The money, $4,200,000 across 37 months, had moved through a series of transfers to a holding company, to an investment vehicle, to a personal account, connected to a man named Richard Vale. She found his name on a Thursday afternoon in October, cross-referencing a payment authorization she had been asked to process with a corporate registry she had accessed out of curiosity. His name, his signature, his account. She closed the browser. She sat very still for 45 seconds. Then she opened a new browser window and began saving copies of everything she could access as quickly as she could access it, because her hands were shaking and her mind was telling her that she did not have a lot of time. 3 days later, Carrington Financial Services sent a notice that the company was being restructured and her position had been eliminated. 4 days after that, 2 men she did not recognize walked through the lobby of her building and asked her neighbor if he knew where she kept her car. She found out about the men from her neighbor, who mentioned it casually in the elevator, who had no idea what it meant, who she thanked calmly, and then went upstairs and sat on her kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet under the sink for 20 minutes breathing. The Carmine building was 40 stories of glass and steel that had nothing to do with what happened on its upper floors, and everything to do with what those upper floors allowed to happen below. Sophia had walked past it 100 times. She had never gone in. At 5 minutes to 8 on a Wednesday morning in November, she pushed through the revolving door and approached the front desk. "I have a meeting with Mr. Sullivan," she said. The man at the desk, young, professionally blank, the kind of blank that is cultivated rather than natural, looked at her for a moment. Name, Sophia Bennett. He typed something, waited, typed something else. 41st floor, he said. "Ms. Okafor will meet you at the elevator." Ms. Okafor was a woman in her 40s, in a charcoal suit, who shook Sophia's hand with a grip that communicated efficiency and nothing else. She guided Sophia into an elevator pressed 41 and stood with her hands folded as the elevator rose. "Mr. Russo appreciates your punctuality," Ms. Okafor said. "Mr. Sullivan," Sophia corrected. Ms. Okafor smiled. It was a professional smile. Of course, the 41st floor was not what Sophia expected. She had expected wood paneling. She had expected heavy furniture and men in suits standing against walls. She had expected the aesthetic of power, the deliberate staging of it, the performance. What she got was an office, a large one with a view of the lake that would have been beautiful if she were in a state to appreciate beauty, which she was not. There was a conference table. There were chairs. There was a man standing at the window with his back to her. He turned when she entered. Damien Russo was 41 years old. He was not large in the way that men who want to intimidate people tend to perform largeness. He was simply present, the kind of presence that some people radiate and cannot help, that fills the room, not with noise, but with density. He had dark hair going gray at the temples, and the face of a man who had made hard decisions and would make them again without apology. He looked at her the way she suspected he looked at everything, with full attention, the kind that measures and calculates and does not pretend to be something softer than it is. "Ms. Bennett," he said. "Mr. Russo," she said. She watched him register that she had not used the alias, and she watched him decide that this registered something about her. "Sit down," he said. She sat. She put the folder she was carrying on the table between them. She had brought 52 pages, a representative sample carefully selected enough to prove she had what she said she had, without giving away everything at once. "I didn't bring everything," she said before he could ask. "I brought enough to show you I'm not lying." He sat across from her. He pulled the folder toward him and opened it and began reading. He read the way surgeons operate, focused, systematic, completely still. He turned pages without hurrying. When he reached the page with Richard Vale's signature on the transfer authorization, he stopped. He placed one finger on the signature. He did not look up. "Where are the other 162 pages?" he asked. "Secure." "How secure?" "Secure enough that 2 men asking my neighbor about my car haven't found them." He looked up then. "You know about the men," he said. "My neighbor has a big mouth and an innocent heart," Sophia said. He thought he was making conversation. Damien Russo closed the folder. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her with an expression that she would spend a lot of time later trying to name. It was not admiration exactly. It was not surprise exactly. It was the expression of a man encountering something that did not fit his existing categories and was now deciding how to recategorize. "You know what Richard Vale will do," he said, "when he finds out you're sitting in this building." "I know what he'll try to do," Sophia said. "That's why I'm sitting in this building." "And you think I'm safer than he is?" "I think you have different interests," she said. I read enough to know your name appears in those records twice, both times on the right side of the ledger. Richard Vale built something that reflects badly on people adjacent to him. I think that makes him a problem for you as well as for me. Silence. Long enough that she heard a phone ring somewhere in another room and be answered and go quiet. What exactly do you want from me? He asked. I want him stopped, she said. I want the families who lost money to get it back. I want him held accountable publicly, legally, in a way that sticks. That's not typically how I operate, Damien said. I know, Sophia said. That's why I also need protection for my daughter and myself while the legal process takes its course. Because I know you can provide that, and I know you'll provide it effectively. He studied her. You have a daughter, he said. 6 years old. Her name is Emma. Something shifted in his expression. She could not identify it precisely. She filed it. How old are you? He asked. 29. And you think, he said slowly, that you can walk in here, put 50 pages on my table, and tell me how this is going to go? Yes, Sophia said. I do. The silence was different this time. And then Damien Russo said something she had not expected. Tell me about Emma. She talked for 11 minutes. She did not plan to. She had planned to maintain the professional register she had established to stay in the language of documents and interests and leverage. But something in the way he asked, without agenda, without performance, the flat, direct curiosity of a man who actually wanted to know, pulled the real answer out of her before she could replace it with a strategic one. She told him that Emma had been premature 6 weeks early, 3 pounds 14 ounces, and had spent the first 11 days of her life in a NICU, while Sophia sat in a chair beside the incubator and read to her. Read her everything, novels and magazines and the backs of cereal boxes, because someone had told her that premature babies respond to their mother's voice, and she had nothing else to offer. She told him that Emma's asthma had been managed and mostly controlled, but required medication that, without insurance, cost more than Sophia's grocery budget for 2 weeks. She told him that Emma had recently developed a habit of drawing pictures of their apartment building from the outside and labeling them "home" in large, uneven letters, and that this was the most heartbreaking and most sustaining thing Sophia had ever seen, because it meant her daughter understood that home was something worth labeling, worth claiming. She told him that the eviction notice on her table meant that home might be a word Emma lost before she turned 7. Then she stopped. She looked at him. That's why I called you, she said. Not because I wanted a mafia boss, because I wanted someone with enough power to protect something small. Damien Russo looked at her for a long moment. I'll be honest with you, he said. I had a speech prepared for what usually happens in a meeting like this. Someone comes in with information. They want money or immunity or leverage. I give them one of those things. The situation resolves. And I don't have a speech for this, he said. He told her before she left that he would assign 2 people to watch her building, and that she was not to change her routine, and that Richard Vale would not know about this meeting. He told her he would be in contact. He walked her to the elevator himself, which Ms. Okafor's expression suggested was not the standard protocol. In the elevator going down, Sophia exhaled for what felt like the first time in 4 days. Her hands were not shaking anymore. She did not know if she had made the right decision. She would not know for some time whether she had made the right decision. But she had made it, and it was made, and there was something almost like relief in the absence of the uncertainty that had preceded it. She walked out through the revolving door into the Chicago morning. The rain from the night before had cleared. The lake was the color of slate. Emma's school started in 2 hours. Sophia got in her car and drove towards something she did not yet have a name for, which she suspected was the beginning of the rest of her life. The version of it that came after fear and before whatever Damien Russo decided to do next. She did not know what that version looked like yet. She only knew she had earned the right to find out. Damien Russo did not sleep that night either. This was not unusual for him. He had not been a reliable sleeper since he was 19 years old and had made his first real decision, the kind that cannot be unmade, the kind that rearranges everything that comes after it. Sleep for men like him was a negotiation rather than a surrender. You got what you could, and you kept one ear open for the rest. But tonight was different. He sat at the desk in his private office on the 41st floor, long after Ms. Okafor had gone home, long after the building had emptied, and the cleaning crew had come and gone, and he read every page of the 52 Sophia had left him. Then he read them again. Then he picked up his phone and called a man named Caruso, who handled research the way other people handled breathing, without apparent effort, and with results that other people found alarming. "Richard Vale," Damien said. "Everything, by morning." "How deep?" Caruso asked. "All the way down." He put the phone down and looked at the folder again. The problem with Richard Vale was not that he was dangerous. Damien knew dangerous men. He had been dangerous men's problem before and had come through it with his organization intact and his principles such as they were still operational. The problem with Richard Vale was the particular flavor of his danger, the kind that hides in spreadsheets, that smiles at charity dinners, that shakes your hand and looks you in the eye while stealing from people who cannot afford to lose what he is taking. Damien had rules. People who knew him well knew the rules even if they could not always articulate them. He did not touch civilians. He did not exploit the desperate. He did not build his power on the wreckage of people who were already losing. These were not rules he advertised. They were simply the architecture of how he operated the load-bearing walls of whatever he had built over 20 years in this city. Richard Vale had used those rules against him. By keeping his operation adjacent to Damien's known sphere, close enough to create the appearance of connection, far enough to maintain deniability. He had constructed a situation in which Damien's name appeared in documents associated with fraud, twice on the right side of the ledger, as Sophia had correctly identified. But proximity to fraud in a federal investigation was its own category of problem. Sophia had not just brought him a moral case. She had brought him a self-preservation case wrapped inside a moral one. He respected that. He respected the intelligence of it, even as he recognized that she had probably not fully calculated it, that she had led with it because it was strategically sound, but she had not led with it cynically. She led with Emma. She led with the 6-year-old who drew pictures of her building and labeled it home. That was the part that stayed with him. I was not a sentimental man. He had removed sentiment from his operating system at roughly the same time he removed reliable sleep, because sentiment in his business was a liability, a pressure point, a door someone else could open from the outside. He had watched other men get broken by sentiment. He had on 2 specific occasions he did not revisit often used other men's sentiment against them. But Sophia Bennett, sitting across from him and talking about an 11-day-old baby and a cereal box and a chair beside an incubator that had done something to his chest that he was not going to name or examine or permit to influence his professional judgment. He told himself this firmly. Then he called Caruso back and added, "I also need a full background on a woman named Sophia Bennett, age 29, Chicago single mother-daughter, named Emma, recently terminated from Carrington Financial Services, and I need to know who sent the 2 men to her building." "You want the daughter's background too?" Caruso asked. "She's 6, Damien said. A pause. "Right," Caruso said. "Just the mother." The report arrived at 6:47 in the morning, 40 minutes before Sophia's appointment. Damien read it in 12 minutes. Sophia May Bennett, born in Evanston, Illinois, to Gerald and Patricia Bennett. Father a union electrician. Mother a school librarian. One older brother, Daniel, currently stationed with the Army in Germany. Community college accounting track discontinued due to financial constraints. A series of service industry jobs, waitress, retail clerk, bakery, cashier, interspersed with the bookkeeping work she had clearly trained herself toward through whatever courses and certifications she could access and afford. Marcus DeWitt. Emma's father had left when Emma was 14 months old and had paid child support exactly 3 times in the subsequent 5 years before falling off the financial radar entirely. She had raised Emma on what she made. No family help. Her parents had retired to Florida on a fixed income that required management rather than generosity. No government assistance beyond the earned income credit at tax time. No fallback, no safety net. Just her. Damien set the report down. He thought about his own mother, which he did rarely and with precision. She had raised him and his brother in a two-bedroom apartment in the near West Side after his father went to prison, and she had done it with a ferocity that he now understood. Looking back across the distance of 22 years was the same ferocity he had channeled into building what he built, just differently directed. He picked up the phone. "Marcus DeWitt," he said when Caruso answered. "Emma Bennett's father. Find him." "What do you want to do with him?" "Nothing yet. Find him first." He put the phone down and went to meet Sophia. She was already there when he stepped off the elevator. She was sitting in the chair across from Ms. Okafor's desk, with her coat still on and her hands folded in her lap, and she was looking at the wall with the expression of someone running calculations behind their eyes. She registered his arrival and stood immediately, not nervous. He noticed, just alert. "I thought of something else last night," she said before he could speak. He gestured toward his office. She walked ahead of him, which he noted most people waited to be led. She sat in the same chair as yesterday. He sat across from her. "Tell me," he said. "The deposits," she said. "The families who paid into the Millfield Cooperative and the other programs, most of them made their payments in the months between April and September. Tax return season and the months just after. Richard Vale's people targeted them specifically at the moment they had the most cash on hand they'd ever have." Damien looked at her. "You confirmed that by cross-referencing the payment dates with the tax calendar," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," she said. "It's in the documents, page 77 of the full set, the payment date analysis. He didn't just steal from poor people. He timed it so he was stealing the one windfall those families might see in a given year." The room was very quiet for a moment. "That's deliberate," Damien said. "That's predatory," Sophia said. He picked up a pen and set it down again, which was the closest he came to a visible reaction. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Go ahead." "Why didn't you go to the police?" She looked at him with an expression that managed to be both completely patient and completely without illusion. "The deputy director of the city's housing authority is on the board of the Lakeview Residential Initiative," she said. "Page 109. His signature is on the annual review that cleared the program as legitimate. A city councilman attended the ribbon cutting for the Millfield Cooperative launch event. I have photographs. 2 senior partners at the law firm that the city uses for regulatory compliance signed off on the corporate filings. If I walk into a police station with this folder, I'm walking into a building where some meaningful percentage of the people inside it owe Richard Vale a favor or a secret." Damien said nothing. "I'm not naive," Sophia said. "I know what you are. I know this is not the conventional approach. But the conventional approach assumes the institutions are clean, and these documents prove they're not." "And you think I am," he said. "Clean." She met his eyes. "I think you're functional," she said. "I think you operate by a set of rules, even if they're not the state's rules. I think your name in those documents twice on the correct side of the ledger means something about what kind of operation you run. And I think Richard Vale being a problem for me makes him a problem for you." He looked at her for a long moment. "You said that yesterday," he said. "Because it was true yesterday, and it's still true today." He told her to leave the full document set with a man named Anthony, who would be waiting in the lobby at noon, and that Anthony would provide her with a number to reach Damien's office directly. He told her the 2 people watching her building would be joined by a third who would specifically handle Emma's school route. Then he said, "I'm going to ask you not to make any additional copies of those documents or share them with anyone else until I've had 48 hours to assess the situation." "And if I say no?" she asked. "Then I'll spend 48 hours wondering whether I'm working with a partner or a liability." She considered this. He watched her consider it, watched the calculations move behind her eyes, watched her weigh what she needed against what she was giving up. 48 hours, she said. Not 49. Something shifted in his chest again. He did not name it. Not 49, he agreed. Caruso called at 2 in the afternoon. "You need to hear this in person," Caruso said. "Then be here in 20 minutes. Caruso was a compact man in his 50s, who had once worked for an accounting firm before discovering that his particular skill set was considerably more valuable in other applications. He sat across from Damien in the conference room and laid 4 printed pages on the table. "Richard Vale isn't the top," he said. Damien looked at the pages. "The shell company structure goes deeper than what the Bennett woman found," Caruso said. "She got 3 layers down. There are 5. Layer 5 connects to a private equity group called Harrow Capital. Harrow Capital has 16 active investors. One of them is a man named Senator Philip Graves." Damien did not move. "United States Senate," he said. "Senate Appropriations Committee," Caruso said. "Specifically the subcommittee overseeing HUD funding, housing, and urban development. The same federal department that was supposed to be monitoring programs like the ones Vale was running." The silence in the room was absolute. "So Vale wasn't just stealing from families," Damien said. "He was stealing from families in programs that were supposed to be federally monitored with a United States senator as a silent partner, while that senator sat on the committee overseeing the monitoring. That's what the money trail says." Damien stood. He walked to the window. He stood there for a full minute looking at the lake, which was the color of slate under an overcast sky. "Does Vale know we've been looking?" he asked. "Not yet." "How long before he does?" "If someone at the city level is watching for unusual inquiries, 48 to 72 hours. Damien turned. "Get me everything on Harrow Capital and Philip Graves, and find out where the families are. Every family. Names, addresses, amounts lost. All of it." Caruso nodded. He was already gathering his papers. "One more thing," Damien said. "Marcus DeWitt. Did you find him? Milwaukee. He's got a new address. New girlfriend, no job. No contact with the child in 18 months. Damien's expression did not change. "Keep the file," he said. "Don't do anything with it yet." Caruso left. Damien stood by the window for another full minute. Then he picked up the direct line and called Sophia's new number. She answered on the second ring. "There's more than you found," he said. A pause. "How much more?" she asked. "Enough that what you're holding becomes something different from what you thought it was." Another pause. Longer. "Different how?" she asked. "The kind of different that has a federal dimension," he said. "The kind that goes past Vale." He heard her exhale. Not in shock. She was not a woman who broadcasted shock. In the way someone exhales when a thing they suspected turns out to be true. "I want to know everything," she said. "I know you do. Not on the phone." "When?" "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. "I'll be there," she said. Then she said quietly, "Is Emma safe?" He looked at the folder on his desk. At the phone numbers of the 3 people currently positioned around her building and her daughter's school route. "Yes," he said, and meant it. What Damien did not tell Sophia that afternoon was that Richard Vale had already moved. Not against her directly, not yet. But 2 hours after Sophia's morning visit, a man who worked for Vale had placed a phone call to someone inside the city assessor's office, and that call had resulted in a flag being placed on Sophia's address. Not a legal flag, an informal one. The kind that meant someone was watching for unusual activity on her property records, her utility accounts, the kind of digital footprint that a woman being investigated for something would generate. It was subtle. It was the work of a man who did not need to be loud because he had enough infrastructure to be quiet. Damien knew this because he had a person inside the assessor's office as well. Not for the same reasons as Vale, for different reasons. Older reasons. The kind of institutional presence you build over 20 years in a city, and that person had called Ms. Okafor at 3 in the afternoon to report the flag. Damien read the message. Vale knew Sophia existed as a variable. He did not yet know she had made contact with the Carmine building. But he was moving, which meant his timeline was shorter than Caruso's 48 to 72 hours. He called Anthony. "Move the third person on the Bennett building to a closer position," he said. "And put someone on Vale's assistant. I want to know if anyone from his office makes contact with anyone in law enforcement." "You think he'll try to flip it?" Anthony asked. "Come at her through the system." Damien thought about the deputy director of the housing authority and the city councilman and the law firm partners. "Yes," he said. "That's exactly what I think." The call came at 11:47 that night. Sophia's voice was controlled but barely. "Someone came to Emma's school today," she said. "After pickup, I had already gotten her, but the school's administrative assistant told me a man came in asking questions about Emma's enrollment, whether she was current on vaccinations, whether her emergency contacts were up to date." Damien was already standing. "What did the assistant say?" "She gave him nothing. She said he wasn't on any authorized list, and she asked him to leave, and he did. But she described him. Young. Professional clothes. He showed her a business card that said, Department of Child and Family Services. Did she keep the card? She took a photo of it. Send it to me." He had the photo in 40 seconds. He sent it to Caruso in 41. Caruso called back in 6 minutes. "That card number is not registered with DCFS," he said. "The name on it doesn't match any active DCFS employee in the state database." Damien sat back. Richard Vale had just threatened a 6-year-old girl using a fake government identity. He had not expected this to make him feel anything specific. He was wrong about that. "Move the third person inside the building," he said to Anthony. "Tonight. And get me a meeting with the federal contact. Not tomorrow. Tonight." "It's almost midnight," Anthony said. "I know what time it is." He called Sophia back. "Lock your door," he said. "Don't answer it for anyone you don't know. I'm sending someone to the floor." Damien. It was the first time she had used his name. "What does this mean?" "It means he knows you exist," he said. "It means he's trying to find out how much you know and whether he can get to Emma to get to you." The silence on her end lasted exactly 3 seconds. "He is not going to touch my daughter," she said. Her voice was not frightened. It was something else entirely. Damien had heard a lot of voices in a lot of moments of crisis. He had heard fear and rage and desperation and calculation, and he had heard men who thought they were brave, and he had heard men who actually were. Sophia Bennett, at 11:47 at night, talking about her daughter sounded like none of those things. She sounded like a wall. "No," Damien said. "He is not." He meant it as a reassurance. But even as he said it, he understood that she hadn't needed it. She had not said it to him. She had said it to the room, to the night, to Richard Vale, wherever he was moving his quiet pieces across the board, believing that a woman alone was a woman who could be broken. "He is not going to touch my daughter." Damien ended the call and stood in his office in the dark. For the first time in a very long time, someone else's certainty felt more solid to him than his own. He picked up his phone and started making calls. He made 9 of them before 3 in the morning. By sunrise, the federal contact had agreed to a preliminary meeting. By sunrise, Richard Vale's assistant had been placed under surveillance. By sunrise, Caruso had identified 6 of the 37 families, had names, had addresses, had the amount stolen, and was working on the rest. By sunrise. Something had shifted in the architecture of the situation, and that shift had a direction, and the direction was forward. Damien stood at his window as the city began to wake. He thought about a woman on the 14th floor of an apartment building with her back against a cabinet under the sink breathing. Choosing what to do next. Deciding that the only door left was the one everyone told her not to open. He thought about what it cost to make that call. He thought about Emma's drawings of the building labeled home. He had built 20 years of the city on the foundation of knowing which things were worth protecting. He was beginning to revise his understanding of how many things that included. The federal contact's name was Agent Sandra Lim, and she did not want to be in this meeting. She made that clear from the moment she walked into the private dining room at the back of a restaurant on the near north side at 6:40 in the morning, before the kitchen opened, before anyone else arrived. She was 43 years old, 12 years with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and she sat down across from Damien Russo, with the expression of a woman who had made a calculated decision she was not yet certain she would not regret. "I want to be on the record," she said, "as having significant reservations about this conversation." "Noted," Damien said. "Do you want coffee?" "I want you to tell me why I drove here at 6 in the morning instead of just opening an investigation the normal way." "Because the normal way," Damien said, "goes through the deputy director of the city's housing authority, who is on the board of one of Vale's front organizations, and through a law firm that signed off on the corporate filings. And eventually, if you go far enough up the chain, through a senator who sits on the appropriations subcommittee that oversees the agency you work for. Agent Lim was quiet for a moment. "Show me," she said. He put Caruso's report on the table. He put a copy of 12 pages from Sophia's documents beside it. He watched her read. She read without expression, which was the expression of someone trained to read without expression. But her eyes moved differently on certain pages. Slower, more carefully. When she reached the Harrow Capital connection, she stopped. She looked up. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "A woman named Sophia Bennett," he said. "Former bookkeeper at Carrington Financial Services. She found the first 3 layers. My people found the rest." "Where is she now?" "Safe." "I'll need to speak with her." "You will, not today. Today I need to know whether you're going to open a proper federal investigation or whether the name on that last page is going to make this disappear." She looked at him directly. "You know I can't guarantee anything." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking for a guarantee. I'm asking for a read. Person to person, not agent to informant." The silence stretched. Outside, the city was starting its morning completely indifferent to what was being decided in this room over untouched coffee. "If this is what it looks like," Agent Lim said finally, "I'm not going to let it disappear." "That's all I needed," Damien said. Sophia found out about the federal meeting when she arrived at the Carmine building at 8 o'clock, and Damien told her directly. "You met with the FBI," she said. "A contact, yes." She sat with that for a moment. "Without telling me." "With information you provided, which I disclosed. She'll want to interview you. I wanted to assess her before I put you in a room with her." "You were protecting me," Sophia said. "I was making sure it was safe to move." She looked at him. "Those are the same thing." "Not always," he said. She let it go, but he could see she had filed it. She filed everything. "Tell me about Lim," she said. 12 years in financial crimes. She's read the documents. She understands what she's looking at, and she's not running from the senator's name. That matters. What does she need from me? Your testimony, the originals, the chain of custody for every document, how you found them, how you copied them, how you stored them. "I can do that." "I know you can," he said. And then, because it was true and she deserved to hear it. "You built a stronger case than professionals, with 3 times your resources, have built on situations like this. You should know that." Sophia looked at him for a moment with an expression he was beginning to recognize. Not softness exactly, but the relaxation of a held breath. The face she made when something she expected to be a fight turned out not to be one. "When do I meet her?" she asked. 2 days. I want 48 more hours to make sure no one from Vale's office has flagged Lim's name. He has reach into the FBI. I don't know yet. I'm not taking the risk. She nodded. Then, the fake DCFS man, at Emma's school. We identified the card printing company. It's a small shop in Wicker Park that does rush orders for cash. We have a physical description of the person who placed the order. Caruso is running it. So Vale is using someone. A contractor, yes. Not his own people directly, he's insulating himself. Which means he's scared, Sophia said. Damien paused. What makes you say that? Because using a contractor means he doesn't trust his own people with the exposure. That's not confidence. That's fear management. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she said most things, as if she had simply worked it out and saw no reason to be theatrical about it. He knows the documents exist. He knows someone has them, and he's trying to find out how much danger he's in before he decides how hard to push. Damien looked at her. You're right, he said. I usually am, she said. It's not a gift, it's just paying attention. The call from Emma's school came at 10:47 in the morning. Sophia's phone rang, and she answered it, and the school's vice principal, a steady woman named Mrs. Okoye, said the words that made every other thought in Sophia's mind go silent. I need you to come to the school, Ms. Bennett. There's a situation with Emma. Sophia was already standing. Is she hurt? She's not hurt. She's fine. But there are 2 people here from DCFS, and they're requesting access to Emma, and I've told them to wait, but—" "Don't let them near her," Sophia said. "I'm on my way. Do not let them near my daughter. Tell them the parent is en route, and any access to the child requires the parent present. Say it exactly like that." She was already moving. She put the call on hold, dialed Damien's direct line, and said the moment he picked up, "Vale just sent real DCFS people to Emma's school. Or people pretending to be. I don't know which. I'm going." "I'm sending Anthony with you," Damien said immediately. "There's no time. He's already in the car. He was parked outside your building. Go." She went. Anthony drove while she sat in the back and did not fall apart, which required more from her than anything else she had done in the past week. She thought about Emma in her classroom with her drawings and her labeling and her laugh that strangers called infectious, and she thought about the particular vulnerability of a 6-year-old who did not yet understand that the world contained people who would use her as leverage against her mother. And she pressed both hands flat against her thighs and breathed. They reached the school in 11 minutes. The 2 people from DCFS were real. They were standing in the main office with their credentials open, and they were real DCFS investigators. And that was almost worse than the fake card from the night before, because it meant Richard Vale had not just sent a contractor this time. He had called in something. He had used an actual government mechanism. Sophia walked in and looked at the woman leading the DCFS pair mid-40s, organized the expression of someone who believed she was doing the right thing, and said, "I'm Sophia Bennett. I'm Emma's mother. What is the basis for this visit?" "Ms. Bennett," the woman said, "we received a complaint regarding your home environment. We're required by statute to—" "Who filed the complaint?" Sophia asked. "Complaints are confidential. Was the complaint filed by an individual or an organization?" A pause. "I'm not able to disclose. When was it filed?" "Ms. Bennett, I understand this is upsetting." "I'm not upset," Sophia said. "I'm asking specific questions about the legal basis for an investigation into my family. I'm entitled to that information, and I'd like it now, please." Anthony stood slightly behind Sophia's left shoulder and said nothing, which was its own kind of statement. The DCFS investigator recalibrated. "The complaint was filed yesterday evening. It raised concerns about housing instability and possible exposure to criminal associations." Sophia absorbed this without flinching. Criminal associations. Vale had filed a complaint accusing her of criminal associations. He had used her contact with Damien, which he must have discovered or guessed or had someone watching for, as the mechanism. He was trying to take Emma. Not because he wanted Emma, because he knew that Emma was the one thing that could make Sophia stop. "I want a copy of the complaint," Sophia said. "I want the name of your supervising director, and I want you to know that this visit will be part of a federal record within the next 72 hours. The woman blinked. "I'm sorry. The documents I'm providing to federal investigators include evidence of a pattern of false official filings used to intimidate witnesses," Sophia said. Her voice was perfectly level. "I want you to consider the possibility that you are currently participating in that pattern, not by intention, but because someone used your agency as a tool. I'm telling you this so that you have the choice to document this visit accurately." Silence in the office. Mrs. Okoye behind her desk was watching Sophia with an expression that mixed admiration with visible alarm. The DCFS investigator looked at her partner, then back at Sophia. "We're required to complete a welfare check," she said. "That requires seeing Emma." "Then see her," Sophia said. "I'll be present for the entire interaction. If you attempt to interview her privately or remove her from this building, I will make a call that will create a level of legal and federal attention on this visit that neither of us wants." "Are we clear?" the woman said. "Yes, Ms. Bennett." They saw Emma. Emma sat in the principal's office with her mother beside her and 2 strangers who asked her polite questions about whether she ate meals and had her own bed and whether her mommy was nice to her. Emma answered with the straightforward confidence of a child who had been loved consistently and well. "She's very nice," Emma said about her mother. "She reads to me every night even when she's tired. She read to me in the hospital when I was born too, even though I was too little to understand. But she did it anyway." The DCFS investigator wrote something on her form. The visit ended in 40 minutes. As the investigators walked toward the exit, the lead woman paused at the door. "Ms. Bennett," she said without turning. "Whoever filed this complaint, I've been doing this job for 9 years, and I know when I'm being used. I'll write this visit up accurately." She walked out. Sophia stood in the school office and let the breath she had been holding for 40 minutes move through her all at once. Emma tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, can we go home?" "Yeah, baby," Sophia said. "Yeah, we can." She did not cry until Emma was asleep. She sat in the kitchen with the light above the stove on and both hands around a cup of tea that had gone cold, and she let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Not the fear she had managed, the fear she had been managing the fear for a week, but the specific sickening quality of the realization that Richard Vale had looked at her life and found Emma and thought there. That one. Use that. She had known abstractly that this was a possibility. Knowing abstractly and living it in an elementary school principal's office were two entirely different things. She picked up the phone and called Damien. He answered on the first ring. "She's fine," Sophia said. "Emma is fine. The investigators were real, but the complaint was fabricated. They were decent, actually. The woman who led it. She knew something was wrong." "I know," Damien said. "Anthony briefed me. He filed the complaint through DCFS," she said. "He knows about you. He knows I've been to your building." "Yes." "He's going to escalate." "Yes," Damien said. "He is." "So what do we do?" There was a pause on the line. Not hesitation, she knew the difference by now. The pause of a man who had already thought through the answer and was deciding how to present it. "We stop being reactive," he said. Meaning we move first. I want to give Agent Lim everything tomorrow, not in 2 days. I want the federal investigation officially opened before Vale can file anything else." Can she move that fast? She can if the material gives her enough to justify emergency case opening. And it does. Sophia thought about this. If we hand everything over tomorrow and Vale finds out the same day, he'll know he's out of moves, Damien said. That's the point. Or he'll do something desperate before the walls close. Yes, Damien said. Which is why I need you to take Emma somewhere else tonight. Not your building. She felt the cold settle into her chest. You think he'll? I think desperate men with resources do unpredictable things. I'm not telling you he will. I'm telling you I would rather you not be there if he does. Where? She asked. He gave her an address. He told her to take a cab, not her car. He told her Anthony would be in the lobby of the destination building and she should go directly to the 4th floor. She looked at Emma's door. She's going to wake up and be confused, Sophia said quietly. Tell her it's an adventure, he said. 6-year-olds believe that. Sophia almost smiled. You know a lot about 6-year-olds for someone who doesn't have children. I was one once, he said. A long time ago. She woke Emma gently. Emma was groggy and warm and smelled like the lavender soap Sophia bought in bulk because it was cheap and Emma liked it. She blinked at her mother in the half-dark. Are we going somewhere? Emma asked. We're going on a little adventure, Sophia said. Overnight. Emma thought about this for 2 seconds. Will there be pancakes in the morning? I will personally guarantee pancakes, Sophia said. Emma climbed out of bed with the boneless efficiency of a child who trusts the person holding her hand completely and without qualification. Sophia picked up the go-bag she had packed 4 days ago the moment she found the documents, the moment some part of her brain that was older and wiser than the frightened part began quietly preparing. She carried Emma down the stairs. Emma was almost too big for this, but not quite, and walked out into the night and into a cab and held her daughter against her side as the city moved past the windows. Emma fell back asleep before they reached the address. Sophia did not sleep at all. The address was a residential building on the north side that Damien apparently owned through a property management company, which Sophia added to the growing inventory of things she was not surprised to discover and would process later. The 4th floor apartment was clean and stocked and had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen with actual food in it, which told her someone had prepared it on short notice, which told her something about the kind of organization Damien ran that she found both reassuring and slightly disquieting. Anthony showed them in, confirmed the building's security setup in 2 sentences and left. Sophia put Emma in the smaller bedroom and tucked her in and stood in the doorway for a while. Then she went to the kitchen table and opened her laptop and began organizing everything. Every document, every timestamp, every chain of custody notation into the clearest possible structure for Agent Lim. She worked until 4 in the morning. At 4:15 her phone rang. She did not recognize her. She answered anyway because she was past the point of caution, feeling like enough protection. The voice on the other end was male. Not young, not old. The specific vocal register of a man in his 50s who has made enough money to believe his comfort is a moral entitlement. "Ms. Bennett," the voice said. "This is Richard Vale." Her hand tightened on the phone. "I'm going to give you one opportunity," Vale said. "Return the documents, all copies. Walk away from whatever arrangement you've entered into with Russo. And I will ensure that the DCFS complaint is withdrawn, that you receive 6 months of housing assistance, and that your daughter is not further involved in this situation." Sophia let the silence breathe for exactly 3 seconds. "Mr. Vale," she said. "Yes, you just called me directly," she said, "from a number I now have, to offer me a bribe, at 4 in the morning, after filing a false DCFS complaint against my child." A pause. "I'm offering you a reasonable resolution." "You're offering me evidence," she said, "of witness tampering, bribery, and retaliation. I want you to know I'm recording this call." She wasn't. But the pause that followed told her what she needed to know about how much he believed her. "Ms. Bennett, I have nothing more to say to you," she said. "But I want you to understand something, and I want you to understand it clearly. You used my daughter. You sent people to her school. You filed a false report against me through a government agency designed to protect children, and you used it as a threat. And I want you to know that every single one of those decisions has made me less willing to stop, not more." She ended the call. She sat at the kitchen table. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, but from something that ran hotter. Something she recognized as the specific anger that comes when someone miscalculates you so badly that the miscalculation itself becomes an insult. He had thought she would break. He had looked at her life, the 2 jobs, the medical bills, the eviction notice, the daughter with the inhaler, and he had thought, this one is easy. This one has too much to lose and not enough to fight with. He had thought that using Emma would end her. He had not understood that Emma was not her vulnerability. Emma was the reason she could not afford to lose. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Damien Vale. "Called me directly. Offered a bribe. Threatened withdrawal if I comply. I have the number." The response came in 40 seconds. "Send me the number. Meeting with Lim moves to 7 a.m. Get some sleep." She looked at the message for a moment. Then she typed back. "He made a mistake calling me." 3 seconds. Damien's reply. "I know. He doesn't understand what you are yet." She put the phone face down on the table. She thought about that, what you are, and she thought about Emma in the next room, breathing steadily, unaware, safe inside the perimeter of everything her mother had done and was doing, and would continue to do. She thought about the first night she sat beside the incubator, reading cereal box ingredients aloud to a 3-pound baby, because someone had said her voice would matter and she had nothing else to offer. She had been 23 years old, and more frightened than she had ever been in her life, and she had kept reading. She had kept reading. She closed her laptop. She did not sleep, but she rested, which is different, and which she had learned was sometimes enough. 7 a.m. was 3 hours away. Richard Vale had just made the last mistake he was going to make in this situation, and Sophia Bennett was ready. Agent Sandra Lim arrived at 7 a.m. exactly, which told Sophia something about her. People who arrive exactly on time are people who decided to arrive early and then waited. She came alone, which told Sophia something else. She sat down at the kitchen table of the North Side apartment, looked at the organized stack of documents Sophia had prepared through the night, and said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "You did this last night." "This morning," Sophia said. "Between 1 and 4. Lim looked at her. "After Vale called you." After Vale called me. Lim opened the first folder. She read the way she had read in the restaurant with Damien, methodically, fully present, nothing performed. Sophia sat across from her and drank coffee, and did not fill the silence, because she had learned that silence was information, and she was not going to give away what she was thinking while Lim was doing the same. Damien sat at the end of the table and said nothing at all, which was its own kind of authority. 14 minutes into the reading, Lim stopped. She looked up. "The call from Vale last night," she said. "Walk me through it. Exact words best as you can recall." Sophia walked her through it. Every sentence. She had a good memory. It was one of the things that had made her good at bookkeeping, the ability to hold sequential detail accurately, and she reproduced the conversation with enough precision that Lim's expression shifted twice: once when Sophia recounted the bribery offer, once when she recounted what she had said in response. "You told him you were recording," Lim said. "Yes." "Were you?" "No." A pause. "That was a risk," Lim said. "Everything I've done in the last week has been a risk," Sophia said. That one at least made him hesitate. Lim looked at Damien. Something passed between them that Sophia could not fully read. Not conspiracy, not collusion, more like mutual acknowledgement of a shared assessment. "The call itself constitutes witness tampering," Lim said. "Combined with the false DCFS filing, which I've already pulled the record on, we have a pattern of retaliation against a witness. That's federal. That gives me the emergency justification I need to formally open the investigation today." "Today," Sophia said. "This morning, within the hour, once I'm back at the office." Lim looked at the stack of documents again. "I need the originals, all of them. And I need a formal recorded statement from you, time, place, date of my choosing, which will be soon." "The originals are in a storage unit in Oak Park," Sophia said. "I'll take you there myself." "We'll go together," Lim said. "Now, if possible." Sophia looked at Damien. He said, "Anthony can stay with Emma." Emma was still asleep in the back bedroom, genuinely unbothered by the world, as only children can be. Sophia thought about the pancake promise she had made. She thought about the fact that her 6-year-old had slept soundly through the night in an unfamiliar apartment while her mother reorganized federal evidence at the kitchen table. Emma trusted her that completely. That trust was not a weight. It was the thing that kept her upright. "Give me 5 minutes," Sophia said. She woke. Emma gently explained that she had to go out for a few hours, that Anthony would be here, that there was cereal in the cabinet and cartoons available, and that she had already arranged for pancakes at lunch. Emma accepted this with the philosophical flexibility of a child who has been raised by a parent who occasionally has to pivot. "Okay," Emma said. "Will you be back before lunch?" "I will be back before lunch," Sophia said. "I promise." She kissed Emma's forehead and walked out. The storage unit was a 12 by 12 space she had rented under her brother Daniel's name, paid in cash. 3 months in advance, the key worn on a cord under her shirt for the past 10 days. She had chosen Daniel's name deliberately. He was in Germany. His name was clean, and anyone running a search on Sophia Bennett would not find a storage unit that didn't belong to her. She had thought of this at 3 in the morning, 10 days ago, sitting on her kitchen floor, still breathing. She had thought of a lot of things at 3 in the morning. Lim stood beside her as she unlocked the unit and pulled up the rolling door and revealed 14 labeled manila folders, 2 USB drives, and a sealed box containing the physical printouts, all 214 pages, organized by date, cross-referenced with a handwritten index she had created on graph paper. Lim looked at the index. "You created a chain of custody document," she said. "I didn't know what it was called," Sophia said. "But I knew that if I ever had to prove I hadn't tampered with anything, I needed to show when I got each document and what state it was in." "Where did you learn to do that?" "I didn't. I just thought about what someone would need to trust me." Lim was quiet for a moment. "Ms. Bennett," she said, "I've been in financial crimes for 12 years. I have worked with cooperating witnesses, ranging from investment bankers to organized crime associates. What you assembled here, under the conditions you assembled it, with no legal training and no institutional support, is—" She stopped. Chose her next word carefully. "Exceptional." Sophia did not say thank you because the compliment, while genuine, was also beside the point. She said, "Is it enough?" "It's more than enough," Lim said. "It's the kind of package that makes a prosecutor's job straightforward." "Then let's get it into your hands," Sophia said. They were back at the apartment by 9:40. Emma was watching cartoons and had negotiated with Anthony to also have toast, which Anthony had made without complaint. He was sitting at the kitchen table reading something on his phone and eating toast himself, which made Sophia feel irrationally and briefly like something almost resembling normal. Damien was on the phone when they walked in. He ended the call immediately. "Lim has the originals," Sophia said. He looked at Lim. "The case is open. As of 8:53 this morning," Lim said. "Official, on the record. I've already briefed my direct supervisor, who I trust, and who has no connection to Vale or Graves." She said the senator's name without flinching, which told Sophia something important about her. "We're pursuing a protective order for Ms. Bennett and her daughter. That will be in place by end of day." "And Vale?" Damien asked. "He doesn't know yet," Lim said. "We have a window, probably 12 to 18 hours before someone in his network picks up a flag. I want to use that window." "How?" Lim looked at him steadily. "That's my operation from this point, Mr. Russo. I need to be clear about that." The room held its breath for a moment. Damien looked at her, then he said, "Understood." Sophia watched this exchange and understood what it cost him, not the words, but the actual release of control. For a man who had spent 20 years being the one who decided how things resolved, handing the mechanism to someone else required something that looked like trust and probably felt like exposure. She understood that feeling. She had been living it for 10 days. The protective order came through at 3:47 in the afternoon. Sophia read it twice at the kitchen table, understanding roughly 60% of the legal language and understanding 100% of what it meant that the weight of federal protection was now formally between Richard Vale and her daughter. She put the document down. She looked at Emma, who was drawing at the other end of the table with a set of markers Anthony had apparently produced from somewhere. She was going to have to ask him about that, and who was drawing. Sophia saw when she leaned over a picture of a building. Not their building. This building. The North Side apartment. Emma had labeled it in large, uneven letters, Adventure House. Sophia stared at it. Then she sat down next to her daughter and said, "Who lives in the Adventure House?" "Us." Emma said, not looking up. "You and me and the quiet man." She meant Anthony. "And the tall man who has serious eyes." Sophia's chest did something complicated. "What about our real home?" she asked. Emma looked up. "Home is wherever you are, Mommy," she said with the absolute confidence of a child who has not yet learned to be uncertain about the things that matter most. She went back to her drawing. Sophia sat with that for a long time. At 6 in the evening, Lim called. "Vale's attorney contacted my office," she said. "He knows." Sophia stood up from the chair. "How?" "We don't know yet. It's possible someone at the recorder's office, the protective order filing is a matter of public record within a certain time frame. Or he has someone watching our case intake system. We're looking at both." "What did the attorney say?" "He called to announce that his client intends to cooperate fully with any investigation and has nothing to hide." Lim said this with the specific flatness of someone conveying something they find insulting. "It's a positioning move. He wants to look like the cooperative party before we can characterize him otherwise." "Can he do that, just announce cooperation and change the frame?" "He can try," Lim said. "But the witness tampering and the DCFS filing happened after the documents were in our possession. That sequence is already in the record. His attorney can announce whatever he wants. The timeline doesn't change." "What does this mean for tonight?" "It means Vale has lawyered up and is going to play defense. It also means he knows the DCFS route is closed and the direct contact route is closed. What it doesn't mean is that he's out of options." Sophia understood. "He still has the senator." "Yes," Lim said. "Senator Graves has not been contacted by my office yet. We're moving on that carefully. Political figures require a level of evidentiary completeness before approach that." "How long?" Sophia asked. Days, not weeks. And in the meantime, stay where you are, Lim said. The protective order is active. The federal case is open and on record. My team has Vale's office under surveillance as of this afternoon. You are significantly safer than you were this morning. Significantly, Sophia said. Not completely. I won't lie to you, Lim said. No. She put the phone down and turned to find Damien standing in the doorway. He had heard enough of it to understand. Days, she said. I know, he said. I need to get Emma back to school. I need to get back to some version of normal life. I can't keep her in this apartment indefinitely. I know, he said again. Do you have a solution, or are you just agreeing with me? Something moved in his expression, not quite amusement, but adjacent to it. I have a partial solution. There's a school 2 miles from here, private, with security infrastructure that most elementary schools don't have. I can make a call. Emma could be enrolled for a temporary period. Sophia looked at him. You know the headmaster. I know the board chair, he said. The distinction matters less than the outcome. And the cost, handled. Damien, it's not charity, he said. It's logistics. She needs to be somewhere safe so you can focus. That's a functional requirement, not a gift. She held his gaze. She had been holding his gaze a lot over the past several days. She realized measuring him each time, recalibrating each time, finding each time that the recalibration was moving in a direction she had not anticipated when she made that call from a payphone in the rain. One condition, she said. Name it. When this is over, when Vale is dealt with and Emma is back in her real school and we're back in our real lives, I pay you back for the school fees, whatever it costs. On a schedule I can manage, but I pay it. He looked at her for a long moment. Why? He asked. Because I'm not going to owe you something I can't quantify, she said. I can be grateful. Gratitude doesn't expire and doesn't compound. Debt does. He said nothing for a moment. Then agreed. She nodded. Make the call. The twist came at 9:17 that night when Caruso walked in with a printed report and set it on the table in front of Damien without preamble. Sophia was in the kitchen. She heard Caruso say quietly, "You need to see this now." She came to the doorway. Damien read the report. His face did not change, which meant the contents were significant. She had learned that his stillness was proportional to the weight of what he was processing. He set the report down. He looked at Sophia. "What?" she said. "The senator," he said. "Philip Graves, Harrow Capital, the investment vehicle connecting him to Vale." "What about it?" "The initial investment was made 4 years ago," Damien said. "But Caruso went back further. The formation documents for Harrow Capital, the original incorporation, lists 3 founding investors." "Vale and Graves," Sophia said. "Who's the third?" Damien said a name. Sophia's body went cold from her sternum outward. The name was the same name that appeared on the lease for the apartment building where she and Emma had lived for 3 years. The same name she wrote on the check every month for rent. The same man who had posted the eviction notice on her door the week after Carrington Financial Services terminated her. Her landlord. Her landlord was a founding partner of Harrow Capital. He hadn't been pressuring her to leave because she was behind on rent. He had been pressuring her to leave because he knew who she was and what she had copied, and he had been trying to remove her from the building, remove her from stability, remove her access to reliable mail and utilities, and the address she used for her daughter's school enrollment before she could do anything with what she knew. The eviction notice was not a coincidence. It was the first move. She sat down. She was not a person who sat down without deciding to, but her legs made the decision before she did. "His name is in the documents," she said. "3rd page of the Harrow Capital formation filing." Caruso confirmed. "We didn't see it initially because the documents you pulled from Carrington were mid-operation. They came in after the original formation. But his name is in the founding records, which we got from the Delaware Corporate Registry." Sophia thought about the eviction notice. She thought about the timing, the week after she lost her job, the week after she copied the files, the week when someone somewhere in the network had realized there was a bookkeeper who had left with knowledge she should not have. She thought about the fact that she had been surrounded by it, that the man who owned her home had been part of the machine that destroyed the other homes she had kept the books for, that she had been, without knowing it, living inside the operation she was documenting. "He's going to know the federal case is open," she said, "by tomorrow." "Yes," Damien said. "Which means he knows I can connect him through the formation documents." "Yes." "Which means he has the same motive as Vale to come at me." "Yes." She looked at Damien directly. "The apartment," she said. "I need to go back to the apartment. Not to stay to get what's there. Emma's things. Important documents. There's a hard drive I kept in the back of the closet behind her winter coats." "I'll send Anthony." "No," she said. "Anthony doesn't know what to look for. I do." Damien looked at her. "I'll go with you," he said. She registered this. He was not offering to send someone. He was offering himself his presence, his attention, the physical fact of him, and she understood that this was not something he did routinely. "Okay," she said. They went at 11 p.m. Anthony stayed with Emma. Caruso sat in a car outside with his phone, and a line opened to the building security team. Sophia moved through her apartment quickly, and with no sentiment, which was the only way she knew how to do anything when speed mattered. She took Emma's drawings off the refrigerator. She took the hard drive. She took the small wooden box her mother had given her that held documents and jewelry, and a photograph of Emma at 11 days old in the incubator. 3 pounds 14 ounces, with a monitor lead taped to her chest and a sock cap on her head, and the absolute determination even then to stay. She took the go bag she had packed 10 days ago. She stood in the middle of her living room for 15 seconds. Damien stood in the doorway and said nothing, which was the right thing. She looked at Emma's drawings, the ones she had left on the refrigerator in the early days before she started taking them. The building labeled home. She took one more from the refrigerator. Then she walked out. In the car heading back north, she held the drawing on her lap. Damien said nothing for the first 4 blocks. Then, "Are you all right?" "I'm deciding," she said. "What are you deciding?" She looked out the window. "Whether I'm angry about the way this started or grateful for the way it's going." He was quiet for a moment. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." "No," she said. "They're not." She folded the drawing carefully and put it in her coat pocket. Then she said, "We have 3 of them now. Vale, Graves, my landlord, and a federal case that's officially open. What's missing?" "Graves," Damien said. "We need Graves on the record. Without him, Vale's attorney will argue his client was peripherally involved in a scheme run by others. With Graves, the whole structure becomes undeniable." "How do we get Graves?" Damien turned to look at her in the dark of the car. "That," he said, "is what I've been working on since this morning." "Tell me." He told her. And for the first time since a payphone in the rain at 2 in the morning, Sophia Bennett felt the shift beneath her feet move in the other direction. Not the ground giving way, but the ground becoming something she could stand on, something she could push back from. She listened to Damien speak, and she thought about 37 families, and she thought about Emma's drawing of the adventure house, and she thought about a 6-year-old's voice saying, "Home is wherever you are, Mommy." And she thought Richard Vale has no idea what he set in motion. He thought he was erasing a problem. He had actually built the case against himself. Every move he had made, the DCFS filing the phone call, the eviction notice that turned out to connect his own partner, had added another layer to something he could not now dismantle, because it was in federal hands, and the federal hands belonged to a woman who had told Sophia she knew when she was being used. Sophia pressed her hand against her coat pocket, against the folded drawing inside it. She had not broken. She had not stopped. And tomorrow, Richard Vale was going to wake up and begin to understand what that meant. Damien's plan was not complicated. That was the first thing Sophia noticed when he laid it out in the car. The best plans never were. Complexity was where things broke, where people got confused, or slow, or caught. What he had built was clean. 3 moving parts, each dependent on the others, each with a single function. The first part was Caruso, who had spent 2 days establishing that Senator Philip Graves had a scheduled appearance at a housing policy roundtable in downtown Chicago in 72 hours. A public event. Cameras. Press. The kind of setting where a senator could not simply walk away from a question, without the walking away becoming the story. The second part was a journalist named Paul Whitfield, who wrote for a national outlet and had been investigating predatory housing schemes for 8 months without the evidence to publish. Damien had a relationship with Whitfield, the way he had relationships with a lot of people in this city. Not friendship, not transaction, but the long-term mutual understanding of two people who occasionally had something the other needed. Whitfield had been sitting on a story. Damien had the evidence that completed it. The third part was Sophia. She was the one who had to be willing to go on the record. Fully. Name attached. Face attached. The woman who had copied the documents, kept them safe, survived the DCFS filing, and the phone call, and the eviction notice, and was now prepared to say publicly what she knew and how she knew it. "If I go public," she said in the car, "before the federal case is resolved, Vale's attorney will argue I'm trying the case in the press." "He will," Damien said. "Whitfield knows how to structure the story so that it leads with the documented evidence, not with you. You're the source, not the headline." "There's a difference." "There is until there isn't," he said. "Whitfield is good. He knows the line." Sophia thought about this for a long time. She thought about the 37 families. She had been thinking about them more and more, not as a statistic in a spreadsheet, but as people. 14 families from the Millfield Cooperative alone. She had processed their deposits. She had their names in the ledger. She knew what they had paid and when, and she knew because she had done the math alone at 3 in the morning, because she could not stop herself from doing the math that most of them had paid with money that had taken years to save. Tax refunds. Inheritance distributions. Overtime worked on weekends. Money set aside in increments of $50 and $100 over the course of years, because someone had told them that one day they could have a home that was theirs, and they had believed it. She thought about a woman she had never met, who had paid $19,000 to the Lakeview Residential Initiative and had never received anything in return except a form letter 11 months later explaining that the program had been discontinued. She thought about what it cost to lose $19,000 when you have nothing to lose. "I'll do it," she said. She met Paul Whitfield the next morning at a coffee shop on the north side with Anthony visible through the window and Damien's number in her recent calls. Whitfield was younger than she expected, late 30s, the kind of thin that came from spending too many hours at a desk and not enough at a table. He had a recorder and a notebook, and the specific attentiveness of someone who has spent years listening for the exact word that changes the shape of a sentence. He asked her questions for 2 hours. He was good. She had expected good. Damien did not send people who were not good, but she had not expected the quality of his listening, which was the kind that made space for the thing you almost said but didn't, and then circled back for it. "When you first realized what the documents meant," he said, "what was your first thought?" "My first thought was Emma," she said. "My first thought was always Emma. And then my second thought was these aren't abstract numbers. These are people's money. People who trusted a system that was designed to take it. And you knew the conventional system couldn't be trusted to address it." "I knew who had signed what," she said. "I knew which names were on which boards and which filings. Going to the police felt like going to the people who had already decided I didn't matter. And going to Damien Russo," she held his gaze. "Going to Damien Russo felt like going to someone who had a reason to care that was aligned with mine and the capability to do something about it." Whitfield wrote something. "How would you describe your relationship with him now?" She considered this carefully. "He stood beside me," she said. "When I needed someone who would stand beside me, not in front of me, and not behind me. That's what I asked for the first night. That's what I got." Whitfield looked up. "Is that rare in your experience?" "More rare than it should be," she said. The article went live at 6 a.m. on Thursday, 47 hours after Sophia had given Whitfield the documents. The headline read, $4 million 37 families, and the senator who looked the other way. Sophia read it on her phone at the kitchen table of the Northside apartment, with Emma eating cereal beside her, and did not read it aloud because Emma did not need to know, not yet not in the language of headlines and federal investigations. What Emma knew was that they were on an adventure and that her mother had kept every promise she had made, including the pancakes. The article was precise and devastating. Whitfield had structured it exactly as he had said: evidence first, pattern second, human cost third. The 37 families were named with their permission, each with the amount lost and the year it was taken. The corporate structure was mapped. The Harrow Capital connection was documented. Philip Graves's name appeared in the fourth paragraph in the specific context of his role on the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee, and the contradiction between that role and his investment in the scheme was stated in one sentence, so clean it required no commentary. Richard Vale's attorney had declined to comment. Philip Graves's office had not responded to 12 requests for comment made over 36 hours. The landlord's attorney had issued a statement saying his client was reviewing the allegations. By 8 a.m., the article had been shared 40,000 times. By 9 a.m., 3 national outlets had picked it up. By 10 a.m., Lim called. "Senator Graves's chief of staff contacted my supervisor this morning," she said. "The senator is requesting a voluntary interview." "He's going to cooperate," Sophia said. "He's going to try to control the narrative by appearing cooperative before we compel him," Lim said. "It amounts to the same thing. We get him in the room." And Vale's attorney contacted us at 7:45 a.m. His client wants to discuss terms. The room was absolutely quiet. "He wants a deal," Sophia said. "He wants to see if one is available," Lim said. "The answer depends on the completeness of his cooperation, which depends on how much he can offer us on Graves. It's a process. It will take time." "What about the families?" Sophia asked. "The 37 families, the money." "Civil litigation is the mechanism for restitution," Lim said. "That's separate from the criminal case. But the article this morning has already produced 3 law firms reaching out to family members about class action representation, so the process is beginning." "They should get everything back," Sophia said. "I know," Lim said. "I can't promise everything. I can promise that the evidence you preserved gives them the strongest possible legal position." Sophia sat with that. Not perfect, not clean, but real and moving in the right direction, which was more than 37 families had been able to say a week ago. "Thank you," she said, "for moving fast." "Thank you," Lim said, and she meant it without performance, "for building something I could actually use." Damien was in the apartment when she put the phone down. He had been there since 7 had read the article. In the first hour had made 4 calls she was not privy to, and had then sat at the table with coffee and said little, which she had come to understand was not distance, but density, the way he processed things that mattered. She told him about Graves, about Vale seeking terms, about the civil litigation beginning. He listened to all of it. Then he said, "How do you feel?" She looked at him. In 11 days of knowing Damien Russo, he had not once asked her how she felt. He had asked what she needed, what she knew, what she wanted, what she was deciding. He had asked functional questions and received functional answers, and that had been the operating language between them, because both of them understood that sentiment was something you earned through time and survival, not something you declared. "I feel like I want to go home," she said. "The real one. I want to take Emma to school on Monday. I want to go back to looking for a job. I want my life back. The actual life, not the crisis version." He nodded. "The protective order covers the apartment. The landlord won't take any action against your tenancy while federal proceedings are active." "I know." She paused. "I want to ask you something." "Go ahead." "The foundation," she said. "What Caruso said about you setting aside resources for the families, is that real?" Something moved across his face that she did not have a word for yet. "It's being structured," he said, "legally. A foundation under independent oversight. The goal is housing assistance for single-parent families caught in predatory schemes, bridge funding, while litigation resolves, so they're not on the street waiting for a court to give them back what was stolen." She looked at him for a long time. "You decided that before any of this went public," she said. "Yes. Before the article, before Lim opened the case. Yes. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Not the pause of a man who didn't know the answer. The pause of a man deciding how much of the truth to give. Because you were right, he said. About what you said at the beginning. That power means nothing if you never use it to protect someone. He looked at the table. I've spent 20 years building something. And somewhere in the middle of this week, I started asking what I've been building it for. The honesty of this was so unguarded that it required her to sit with it before she responded. I didn't say that to change you, she said. I know, he said. That's why it worked. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, trailing the blanket she had carried from the apartment, holding a drawing in her other hand. I made this, she announced, and crossed the room and put the drawing on the table between them. It was a picture of 3 people. One was small with curly hair. Emma's self-portrait identifiable by the consistent oversized eyes she gave herself in every drawing. One was taller with a ponytail, Sophia. And one was the tallest, drawn with what Emma apparently understood as the distinguishing feature of the serious-eyed man, which was a single dark line for a mouth that managed, even in crayon, to look exactly like Damien. Emma had labeled the picture in her large, uneven letters, U.S. Sophia looked at the drawing. She looked at Damien. He was looking at the drawing with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Something undefended, something that had not been calculated or prepared, something that arrived before he could manage it. Thank you, Emma, he said. His voice was entirely normal. Only Sophia, who had spent 11 days reading the spaces between his words, heard what was underneath it. Emma climbed into her chair and reached for her cereal. You have serious eyes, Emma told him, but they're not mean. They're just thinking all the time. Damien looked at Emma. You're very perceptive, he said. Emma shrugged. Mommy says that too. They went back to the apartment on Sunday. Not because everything was resolved. It wasn't and wouldn't be for months, because federal cases move at the pace of federal cases, and civil litigation moves slower, and the machinery of accountability once engaged grinds rather than cuts. But the protective order was active. The federal case was open, and Public Vale was negotiating terms that did not include threatening witnesses, and the landlord's attorney had sent a letter confirming that no eviction proceedings would be pursued. The eviction notice that had sat on her kitchen table, like a verdict, was gone. Sophia had removed it the first day, actually had taken it down, and filed it with the documents, because it was evidence, because everything was evidence, because she was a woman who had learned that the things designed to intimidate you are most useful when you refuse to let them function as intended. She and Emma came back on a Sunday afternoon with 2 bags and the drawing of the adventure house, and the blanket, and the hard drive, and the photograph of Emma at 11 days old. Emma walked through the apartment, checking on things: her bedroom, her toys, the refrigerator, the window where she liked to watch the street, with the satisfied thoroughness of someone conducting an official inspection. It's still home, Emma announced. Yes, Sophia said. It is. Emma went to her room. Sophia stood in the kitchen alone for a moment. She thought about 11 days ago, which felt like a different geological era. She thought about the payphone, and the rain, and the voice that answered on the first ring, and the silence that followed when she said, I need your help, because nobody called Damien Russo saying that. She had called him saying that. And something had shifted, not just in the situation, but in her understanding of what it meant to ask for help. She had spent 6 years believing that asking was weakness, that needing anything from anyone was a crack in the foundation. She had built her entire life around the principle of sufficiency, being enough, having enough, needing nothing she could not generate herself. She had been wrong. Not about strength. She was strong. She had always been strong. But strength was not the same as solitude. And the difference between those two things had cost her more than she had understood, for longer than she wanted to count. She picked up her phone and called her brother Daniel in Germany. He answered on the 3rd ring, with the grogginess of a man whose time zone was 6 hours ahead. Soph, he said. It's midnight here. I know, she said. I know. I needed to hear your voice. I wanted to tell you something. I was awake instantly. The way people who love you are instantly awake when your voice carries a certain register. What happened? Are you okay? Is Emma? We're fine, she said. We're both fine. We're home. You're scaring me. I'm not trying to, she said. I just wanted to tell you that I went through something hard this week, and I handled it, and I wanted you to know. A pause. Soph, he said, and his voice was the voice of her brother, who had grown up in the same two-bedroom apartment in Evanston, and who understood without explanation what it meant for her to say those words, "I'm proud of you." She did not cry. She was done with that particular form of release for the foreseeable future. But she breathed. "I'll tell you everything soon," she said. "Go back to sleep." "Call me tomorrow," he said. "I will," she said. She put the phone down and stood in her kitchen in the quiet of a Sunday afternoon, with Emma in the next room, making the sounds of a child returning to her things, the specific low-grade industry of toy reorganization and stuffed animal accounting. And Sophia thought about what came next. The call from Damien came that evening. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like the first breath after a long time underwater," she said. "Good. How are you?" A pause. She had started asking him this, and she had noticed that he paused each time, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he was apparently unaccustomed to being asked. "Moving forward," he said. "The foundation. The legal structure is complete. We're beginning outreach to the families this week. The first disbursements will go out within 30 days. What are you calling it?" Another pause, this one different. "I was going to ask you," he said. She thought about it. She thought about Emma's drawing of the adventure house and the word she wrote underneath it with large, uneven letters. "Call it home," she said. Just that. One word. He was quiet for a moment. "Home," he said. "Yes." Done. She heard something in his voice that she had been hearing more frequently over the past several days, a register she had not heard in the beginning, in the early meetings at the Carmine building when he was all precision and management and controlled power. Something that was underneath all of that, older than all of that she suspected very few people had heard in a very long time. It sounded like a man who was beginning to believe in what he was building. "Damien," she said. "Yes. Thank you for what you did. Not the logistics, I know you'll tell me it was operational necessity, but for the rest of it. For taking my call. For believing that Emma and I were worth the trouble." He was quiet for a long moment. "You weren't trouble," he said. "You were clarity." 6 weeks later, Richard Vail was formally indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud conspiracy and witness tampering. Senator Philip Graves resigned from his seat on a Tuesday morning with a statement that used the phrase, "in the best interest of my constituents," 3 times and said nothing true. The Department of Justice announced a separate investigation into his role in the Harrow Capital scheme the following Thursday. The landlord accepted a plea agreement that included full financial disclosure and cooperation with the civil class action. The class action itself, representing 29 of the 37 families who had been defrauded, was certified in federal court 8 weeks after the article ran. 3 law firms were working it pro bono, which was the thing that surprised Sophia most, and which Whitfield told her when she asked was the article. People had read it and made different decisions than they would have otherwise. That was what the story had done. That was what her documents had done by existing, by surviving. The Home Foundation made its first disbursements on a Wednesday in February. 11 families received bridge funding that covered their housing costs while their civil claims moved through the courts. Sophia attended the small Damien held for the occasion, which was not a gala or a press conference, but a meeting in a community center on the south side, where the families came, and someone from the foundation's legal team explained what the money was and how it worked and what their rights were going forward. Sophia sat in the back. She watched a woman across the room, 50s, tired, in the way that specific financial stress makes you tired, the kind that doesn't leave when you sleep. Open an envelope and read what was inside, and press both hands over her mouth. Sophia looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then she looked back. The woman had lowered her hands. She was crying, but she was also talking to the person beside her, explaining something, and she was already doing the thing that people do when something they stopped believing in starts being real again. She was starting to plan. That was what this had been for. All of it. The payphone in the rain, and the 52 pages, and the 6-hour meeting with Lim, and the storage unit in Oak Park, and the call from Vale at 4 in the morning, and every document, and every sleepless hour, and every moment of terror, managed and converted into action, it had been for this. For a woman in a community center in February, pressing both hands over her mouth, and then beginning to plan. After the event, Damien found her in the hallway. "You're crying," he said. "I know," she said. "Don't make it weird." He did not make it weird. He stood beside her and said nothing, which was still one of the things he did best. "She's going to be okay," Sophia said. "That woman in the blue coat, she's going to be okay." "Yes," he said. "She is. Because of what you built. Because of what you started," he said. "I built the mechanism. You created the reason." She looked at him. In the 6 weeks since they had gone back to their apartment on a Sunday afternoon, she and Damien had spoken every few days about the case, about the foundation, about Emma, about the slow, careful process of two people who have survived something together, learning what they are to each other in the aftermath. It was not a fast process. Neither of them was built for fast in the ways that mattered most. But it was a real one, and realness she had decided was worth more than speed. "Emma asked about you yesterday," she said. "What did she ask?" "She asked if the Thinking Eyes man was going to come to her school play." He looked at her steadily. "When is her school play?" 3 weeks. She's playing a tree." "A tree?" "She's very committed to the role," Sophia said. "She's been practicing standing very still." Something happened in his expression that she had only seen twice before, that unguarded thing, the thing that arrived before he could manage it. "I'll be there," he said. "She'll be pleased," Sophia said. "She drew you a very accurate portrait." "I saw it," he said. "She got the eyes right." "Thinking all the time," Sophia said. "Thinking all the time," he agreed. They stood in the hallway, and the sounds of the families inside moved around them. Voices returning to normal registers. Someone laughing. The specific loosening of rooms when fear begins to lift. And Sophia thought about a night 11 days that had felt like years, and a payphone and a question asked in the dark. Who gave you this number? Nobody had given it to her. She had found it the way she found everything, by looking harder than was comfortable, by trusting the thing that felt wrong, by refusing to accept that the only people worth calling were the people everyone agreed were safe. She had called the most dangerous number she knew, and it had answered. And everything that had seemed impossible, the justice, the protection, the room full of families beginning to plan again, the foundation with the one-word name, the man beside her who had spent 20 years building power and was now for the first time building something worth having. All of it had begun with a woman who was terrified and certain, standing in the rain at 2 in the morning, choosing to open the only door left. Sophia Bennett had not been rescued. She had decided clearly, deliberately, and without apology to fight. And every person in that room, and every family whose name would be on a disbursement check, and every future family the foundation would reach, would exist on the other side of that decision. She had made the call nobody expected. She had won the fight nobody believed she could win. And Damien Russo, the most feared man in Chicago, was standing beside her, not because she had needed saving, but because she had been the first person in 20 years to show him that power, real power, is not what you take. It is what you choose to protect.